I walked outside one morning, coffee in hand, completely minding my own business, and I almost choked. Someone had painted bright yellow parking lines directly onto my private driveway. Not a public lot, not a shared space. My private driveway, the one I own, the one with my name on the deed, the one I pay property taxes on every single year. And there were already 3 cars parked in it like it was a shopping mall. So I did what any reasonable property owner would do. I called every tow truck company in a 15-mile radius, and I watched every single car disappear, one by one, while I stood there sipping my coffee with the biggest smile on my face. Stay with me, because what happened next is something you are absolutely not prepared for. Let me set the scene for you, because context matters here. I've lived in this house for 6 years. 6 years of cutting that grass, fixing that fence, shoveling that driveway in the middle of January at 6 in the morning when nobody else in the world wants to be outside. I earned every inch of that property. The driveway runs along the side of the house. It's long, it fits about 4 cars comfortably, and it connects to my detached garage in the back. From the street, I'll admit, it looks like it could be a parking area if you didn't know any better. But there are signs. There have always been signs. Big, clear, unmistakable private driveway NO parking signs that I personally installed after the first time a stranger left their car on my property back in year 2 of living here. So when I walked outside on that particular Tuesday morning and saw fresh yellow paint on my concrete actual painted parking stall lines, complete with numbers, I had to physically stop and process what I was looking at. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accident. Somebody had taken time, purchased materials, and deliberately marked my private property as a public parking facility. And whoever did it had clearly told people about it. Because 3 cars I had never seen in my life were already neatly parked inside those freshly painted lines like they belonged there. I want you to understand something before we go any further. I am not a confrontational person by nature. I genuinely prefer to resolve things calmly, like an adult, through conversation. I have introduced myself to every neighbor on this block. I bring cookies during the holidays. I wave when I'm pulling out of the driveway. I'm not the guy who goes looking for trouble. But I'm also not the guy who is going to stand on his own property and watch strangers treat it like a public utility while someone out there profits off my land. Because here's what I figured out pretty quickly. This wasn't just some innocent misunderstanding. Someone was charging people to park on my driveway. I know that sounds insane. Trust me, I know. But the clues were all there once I started paying attention. First, the paint. Those weren't random lines. They were measured, spaced, and numbered. Stall 1, stall 2, stall 3, stall 4. Professional looking. Deliberate. Second, the timing. There's a large event venue about 3 blocks from my house that hosts concerts, private parties, and community events multiple times per month. Parking around that venue has always been a nightmare, and anyone in the neighborhood knows it. On big event nights, people drive in from all over and scramble for any parking they can find, which means there's a genuine market for someone willing to sell parking spots close to the venue. And my driveway long, flat, well-lit, and just 3 blocks away was apparently someone's business opportunity. I started asking around carefully without tipping my hand. A neighbor 2 doors down told me she'd noticed a man she didn't recognize walking the block a few weeks earlier, looking at driveways. Another neighbor said he'd gotten an actual printed flyer advertising event parking in the area for a flat rate per night. I never got one of those flyers, which makes sense because I'm the one who owns the driveway they were selling. Why would they advertise to me? The whole operation depended on me not knowing. What I was dealing with wasn't just a neighbor being rude or thoughtless. This was someone running an unauthorized parking business on private property they didn't own, collecting money from unsuspecting drivers who thought they were paying for a legitimate spot, while I got nothing except strangers blocking access to my own garage. Every single piece of that is wrong. It's trespassing on my end. It's potentially fraud on the customer's end. And I had no idea how long it had been going on before that Tuesday morning when the paint finally gave it all away. Before I did anything else, before I called a single tow truck, before I confronted anyone, before I posted a single thing anywhere I sat down and did my homework. Because here's what I've learned from watching too many of these situations go sideways. Acting on emotion without understanding the law is how you turn a winning situation into a losing one. I was not about to let whoever did this flip the script and make me the bad guy because I acted impulsively. I pulled out my property deed and confirmed, in writing, exactly where my property lines are. I photographed the freshly painted lines from every angle with timestamps. I photographed the cars parked in my driveway with their license plates visible. I photographed my existing no parking signs, which were still standing and clearly visible. Then I called my local non-emergency police line, not to report an emergency, but to document the situation and ask exactly what my rights were as a property owner dealing with unauthorized vehicles on private land. The officer I spoke with was genuinely helpful. He confirmed that vehicles parked on private property without the owner's consent are trespassing and can be towed at the owner's request without any additional waiting period or warning required, as long as the property is properly posted, which mine was. He advised me to call a licensed towing company, provide them with documentation of ownership if needed, and let them handle the removal through proper channels. He also strongly encouraged me to file a formal report about the painted lines and the suspected unauthorized parking operation, which I did right then and there on the phone. I had a case number before I made a single call to a tow company. That case number matters. Document everything before you act. With my documentation solid and my legal footing confirmed, I made the calls. Now, I want to be honest with you. Towing someone's car is not something I took any particular pleasure in, even under these circumstances. Those 3 drivers parked in my driveway may have genuinely believed they were paying for a legitimate spot. They might not have known they were parking on someone's private property. They were in some ways also victims of whoever set this whole thing up. That said, I could not leave their cars on my property, and I could not reward the behavior by doing nothing. So the tow trucks came. Watching those 3 cars get hooked up and hauled away is honestly one of the more surreal experiences I've ever had on my own property. My neighbor across the street came out on her porch to watch. A couple of people walking by slowed down to look, and I just stood there, right at the edge of my driveway on my property, within my rights, doing absolutely nothing illegal or even remotely questionable, and let the professionals do their job. All 3 cars were removed within about 40 minutes. I now have my driveway back, but the situation was far from over. About 2 hours after the tow trucks left, the confrontation came to me. And when I say confrontation, I mean a man I had never seen before was standing in front of my house, visibly upset, demanding to know what I'd done with his parking lot. Not asking, demanding, standing on the public sidewalk in front of my house, talking to me like I owed him an explanation for towing cars off my own driveway. I want to be very clear about how I handled this moment, because it would have been very easy to let it get heated. I kept my voice calm. I did not step off my property. I did not threaten him or insult him. I asked him directly and politely whether he was the person responsible for painting lines on my driveway. He didn't exactly deny it. What he said was something along the lines of that space was just sitting there empty and people needed parking. As if an empty driveway is an invitation for a stranger to claim it as their own business. I told him that the property he had painted belonged to me, that I had documentation proving it, that I had a police report number, and that if he or anyone acting on his behalf stepped onto my property again without my explicit written permission, I would be pursuing every legal remedy available to me. Then I went inside. I didn't yell. I didn't chase him. I let the situation land on his shoulders exactly where it belonged and walked away with my dignity fully intact. I will be honest that I took everything I had at the moment, but it was absolutely the right move. In the days following, I followed up with the police department on my report. I also consulted briefly with a property attorney about the possibility of pursuing civil damages for the unauthorized use of my land and the cost of removing the paint, because yes, painted concrete requires professional remediation, and that is not a cheap process. I also installed 2 additional security cameras covering the full length of my driveway, upgraded my no parking signage, and added a chain across the entrance on nights when the venue down the road has events. As for the paint on the concrete, it took a professional service 3 visits and a significant check to fully restore my driveway to its original condition. That cost is part of the civil claim I'm exploring. Whether it ever results in a judgment in my favor is yet to be determined, but I have every receipt and every photograph I need to make the case. What I want you to take away from this story more than the drama, more than the tow trucks, more than any of it is this. Know your property rights, document everything before you act, and never let someone else's audacity bully you into accepting a situation that is clearly and obviously wrong. The moment you doubt yourself and do nothing is the moment you've already lost. I didn't lose, and neither should you. If this story hits differently for you, if you've ever dealt with neighbors or strangers treating your private property like it's their smash that like button right now, because YouTube's algorithm needs to know this content belongs in front of more people. Subscribe to Neighbor Wars HQ if you're not already here, and make sure you hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Drop your own property nightmare in the comments below. I read every single one, and your story might just become the next episode. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because there are people out there right now who don't know what their rights actually are, and this video could genuinely help them. Welcome to Neighbor Wars HQ. This is where property owners fight back legally, calmly, and completely on the record.